The Triforce is the golden relic left by the goddesses shortly after creation, and serves as the foundation of not only Hyrule, but the entire world. It is also the object that has been the source of countless desires, causing much conflict over its possession. The big question I am asking today is simple, but has many complicated answers. Believe me, there are some things I realized when crafting this theory that were not only unexpected, but may explain some of the unspoken background elements we see in Breath of the Wild and perhaps its sequel. I'm Cornelius Belmont, and let's talk about what the Triforce actually does. Before we begin, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. I'm trying really hard to grow the channel, and every subscription and like matters in this early stage. With that out of the way, let's dig in. As I stated earlier, the Triforce is the fundamental foundation that sustains the world. The relic presumably has some function that fuels the world with the power of the three golden goddesses. If we revisit the creation myth from Ocarina of Time, we are told that the three goddesses descended into the chaos where they used their powers to create Hyrule. Specifically, Din, the goddess of power, created the land of the world. Nehru, the goddess of wisdom, created the laws of the world. And Farore, the goddess of courage, created the life on the world which would obey those laws. Finally, when the three departed, they left the Triforce behind, which is later stated by Princess Zelda to contain the power of these goddesses. This myth has been expanded upon since the original creation of Ocarina of Time, specifically in the game Skyward Sword. That game introduces Goddess Hylia into the mix, a lesser deity that the three golden goddesses entrusted the Triforce to in order to safeguard the world they had created. Eventually demons arose, led by Demise, who wanted the Triforce for himself. Hylia, unable to best him on her own, chose to use the relic in order to seal him away. There was a catch though. For completely unexplained reasons, no deity or spirit can use the relic directly. In order for Hylia to circumvent this rule, she chose to give up her divinity, reincarnating into the form of a Hylian, and then used the Triforce in order to end the conflict with Demise. Using the Triforce has always been depicted as making a wish, though the act is rarely depicted in games. This wish-granting power is the primary reason why people desire the Triforce, the single most noteworthy person among them being Ganondorf, King of the Gerudo. This wish-granting power is something that I'm going to analyze a bit more. Specifically, what the power is and how it logically follows from the powers we see invested into the Triforce. As talked about in the creation myth by Princess Zelda, the three pieces hold part of the goddess's power. It is also revealed in A Link Between Worlds that the Triforce, or rather a Triforce, is essential for sustaining the world. In the case of Lorule, they destroyed their Triforce in order to put an end to the cycles of war. The results of that action caused their world to wither and decay. There are many aspects of the Lorule Triforce that we know nothing about, not even the virtues associated with it, but we do know the virtues and functions of the one that we see in Hyrule. Let's take a closer look at them. Assuming that each aspect of the Triforce corresponds with the same aspect of said golden goddess, then it is safe to say that the same powers they have reside in each piece. This would mean that the Triforce of Power is responsible for sustaining the land physically, a process that would require presumably a lot of energy and, well, power. Wisdom sustains the laws of the land, which is a bit of a strange phrase, but implies that the rules of the world are dependent upon it. To me, this seems like they are talking about the physics of the world, both of the physical type and the mystical. Finally, courage would sustain the life of the land, likely through the act of determination and force of will, Without those, there would be no drive for life forms to continue living. I'll touch more on that one in a bit. With those three aspects flushed out, we can get a clearer picture of exactly how the Triforce is able to grant wishes, and each one is important for the task. Courage is the one that interfaces with the wish maker and interprets their will. Wisdom warps the laws of nature in order to facilitate whatever the wish is, and power simply supplies the energy needed to do so. In short, the relic reads the user, then uses its divine energy to warp reality by modifying the laws of nature. Now, let's talk about the split mechanic we see happen in the games. When a person touches the Triforce, the relic will determine if the heart of the user is balanced among the three virtues. If they are, the Triforce will remain unified and grant the wish. If the person is not in balance, then the relic will split into three pieces, each representing a specific virtue. One will stay with the person who touched it based on which virtue they most align with, while the remaining pieces will go to entities who best represent those virtues. The three pieces must then be gathered again for the person to be able to use its power to grant their wish. Many of the games happening after Ocarina of Time's time split focus on the conflict of this mechanic. This is where we get an understanding of how each Triforce holder has been augmented. Power is the easiest one to assess here. We can clearly see the enhancements that Ganondorf has while under its effect. Before gaining the Triforce of Power, Ganondorf was already an accomplished warlock, having been trained in magic by his adoptive mothers Kotake and Kome, not to mention that the ability to use magic is rare in itself. His powers were strong enough that he could already cast death curses, energy bolts, and presumably some other nasty things. When he is in possession of the Triforce of Power, it seems to amp up virtually all of his abilities. In Ocarina of Time, we see even more powerful magic effects when fighting him. We also see the remains of Castletown after he laid waste to it, and a phantom copy of himself that he created to guard the Forest Temple. In Twilight Princess, we see him effortlessly break chains and murder a sage with his bare hands, both shortly after being imbued with the relic. The holder of the Triforce of Power is, in short, under the most powerful buff in existence. Wisdom is a bit more difficult to determine. You would think by calling it wisdom, it would simply imbue the holder with knowledge. That doesn't seem to be the case, though I could see how people might think that since the holder is almost always Princess Zelda. If we look back on what the Triforce of Wisdom actually does, it's clear that the holder isn't being imbued with knowledge, but rather with the controls of the laws that govern reality. In today's terms, where we tend to see magic as some sort of super science, it would be fair to say that such a power would really mean the holder could break the laws of physics, though they may lack the energy needed to do so. Clearly, wisdom and power together could be a truly frightening combination, as they would have the means to do virtually whatever they want. It is worth noting that in the game A Link Between Worlds, we see Princess Hilda briefly in control of the Triforce of Wisdom. At the moment she claims it, she may not exactly realize what it could do, but as the battle with Yuga continues, she may figure it out. She then demands that Yuga give her the Triforce of Power, perhaps realizing that she has the means to alter reality, but lacks the power to do so. Unlike Princess Zelda, Hilda may not carry the blood of a goddess, and thus lack any internal energy to feel her newly unrestrained powers, outside of whatever magic she natively has, of course. Fortunately for our hero, when Yuga steals the Triforce of Wisdom from Hilda, he seems unaware of the full power he then had at his disposal. That leaves us with the final piece, the Triforce of Courage. This one is harder to pin down because we rarely see it ever take an active role. The only time I could actually find it activating is in Ocarina of Time before engaging Ganondorf. In that instance, it restores the hero to full strength. In Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, it is possible that the old man we see at the end of the game uses it in order to create a suitable challenge for Link. If this is the case, then this is the only time we see it used by a person other than Link. It is worth noting that in A Link to the Past and the Oracle games, the Triforce speaks to the hero. This may actually be a function of the Triforce of Courage interfacing with a person. My thoughts concerning this one is that we don't see it doing anything that special, because the properties that it would grant to its holder are largely identical to what we see in the hero already. Given this overlap, I think it's entirely possible that Hylia actually rigged the game in case of a Triforce split, to where 2 of the 3 pieces would always go to 2 specific entities of her choosing. Since a piece is always drawn to those most aligned with its virtue, Courage would then be drawn to the reincarnated soul of her chosen hero, while Wisdom would always be drawn to the person capable of altering the world around them. Considering that Hylia was a goddess of time, then the person who carries her bloodline should always be the ideal candidate. If this idea of her rigging the selection is true, Hylia may have also set up another entity that the Triforce of Power would always be drawn to. If that were the case, then the reason why Ganondorf would have claimed power upon touching the Triforce would not have been because he is the most eligible for the piece, but only out of the split clause where the person touching it gets to keep a piece that best reflects them. If she did set up such an entity, that person clearly would have been overshadowed when Demise placed his curse, as it would seem that the reincarnation of his hatred and malice trumps whatever she set up. This would be supported by what we see in Twilight Princess, where the Triforce of Power goes to Ganondorf during his execution. Even more interesting, according to Zelda Encyclopedia, is that after the split in the Oracle games, the Triforce of Power again went to Ganondorf even though he had been defeated. It also says that the Triforce pieces now reside in the souls of the hero, the princess, and Ganon. A concept that is both fascinating but not really relevant to this theory at hand. Let's summarize. The Triforce is a relic left behind by the Golden Goddesses shortly after creation. Each piece contains some of their unique energy, and continues to sustain the world even after their departure. It was entrusted to a lesser deity, Hylia, who would watch over and protect the world they created. Eventually, a demon lord Demise came to the world wanting to claim the relic for his own. During the conflict, Hylia, in desperation, reincarnated herself into a Hylian so she could then use the relic and seal him away. When an individual uses the Triforce, they do so by touching it and making a wish. The wish is granted by the Triforce of Wisdom having Nehru's power to alter the laws of reality, the Triforce of Power having Din's energy to fuel whatever the alteration is, and the Triforce of Courage acting as an interface for whoever is making the wish. Before the wish is granted, the Triforce of Courage measures the qualities of the person. If they are not in balance, it initiates a Triforce split. During a Triforce split, 2 pieces go to the entities most aligned with those virtues, while 1 remains with the person who touched the relic based on which virtue they align with. The Triforce holders then gain qualities related to those of the goddesses. The power holder gains an enormous boost to virtually every aspect of themselves, as they now have near limitless energy at their disposal. The wisdom holder gains the ability to manipulate the laws that govern reality, though they may lack the energy needed to do so. Finally, the qualities of the courage holder are largely unknown since many of them are already present in the spirit of the hero. When Hylia used the Triforce to defeat Demise, she strategically set up 3 entities who would always become Triforce holders if there was a split. Wisdom would always go to her incarnation, since her bloodline would have the ability to manipulate time. Courage would go into the reincarnation of her chosen knight, an entity who already matched those virtues. And finally, power would go to an unknown entity, who would carry virtues similar to that of the Triforce of Power. After the events of Skyward Sword, Demise would derail her plan by introducing his own incarnation, who would always be best suited to inherit the Triforce of Power. As a result, whenever a Triforce split occurs, the Triforce of Power would inherently go to Demise's reincarnation. With all that being said, I think I've nailed down exactly how the Triforce functions, how it grants wishes, and how it augments its holders. This is all leading into a theory I have crafted for next week, which addresses the various colored energies we see in Breath of the Wild, and how each of them relate to the Triforce as a whole. And so I hope to see you all next week. Thanks for watching. Thank you guys for watching the episode. For the time being, I'm going to continue to focus on Zelda theories, but I'm beginning to plan out some Square Enix related theories for the future. If you enjoy my content, please give the video a like and subscribe. That would really mean a lot to me, and it helps the channel grow. See you next time. This is Cornelius Belmont signing out.